So now it's finally time for Stepney to leave. All the engines were happy with his visit, and were all disappointed to see him go. According to Top Hat, though, with Stepney leaving, the rest of his engines were going to need another engine to fill in. What, like they weren't managing before? How did he come to realize this?
A diesel is all that's available. Please do your best to avoid any, disturbances.
What does that mean? Whispered Duck.
That means this diesel is difficult,
Snapped James. And he was.
Are you seriously asking that question, Duck? You of all engines should know what Top Hat is referencing. You were at the center of the first fiasco. What, does Duck have amnesia? If we are starting off this bad, I'm concerned for the rest of the story. And yet the rest of the engines are aware of past experiences, so what gives? And the new diesel acted just as expected.
It's not your fault, but Sir Topham Hatt should scrap you and get engines like me. A fill of oil, a touch on the starter, and I'm off. No bother, no waiting. They have to fuss round you for hours before you're ready.
Well now, that surely was not going over nicely. I mean, I'm sure D261, who is the diesel going unnamed here, is speaking from a factual standpoint, but he obviously doesn't have to rub it in like he's doing. He could very well just cooperate with the other engines and say nothing. But of course he wants to add his 2 cents, and Top Hat's engines were not having it.
Disgraceful. Disgusting. Despicable. To say such things to us, cried Donald and Douglas. It's to teach him a lesson we'd be wanting. Now how do we do it?
Their chance came sooner than expected.
Wow, the 3 drama queens of Sodor even repeat the same lines from Season 2. Come on, Duck, don't you remember that? Meanwhile, D261 was resting comfortably on a siding waiting for his coaches. Duck and Stepney were nearby and were trying to ignore him, but the diesel insisted they watch as he started off. Simultaneously, an inspector was in the vicinity making sure things were good to go. But his hat was more of what was in a hurry when the wind began to kick up.
Then it happened. Shaking and spluttering, the diesel stopped. Meanwhile, the inspector was looking for his hat.
Wanna bet where it went? Pretty clear if you ask me. Now, if it wasn't so windy, nothing would have come from this, and the diesel more than likely would have continued on his way doing what was asked of him. But being that D261 suffered from his own Gordonism, it served him right. Geez, when was the last time one of those moments happened? It's certainly been a while. So now that D261 was out of commission, Duck and Stepney were the only 2 ready to take over.
The engines were soon ready.
Gordon will take over from halfway, so get the train to there. Good luck.
Don't worry, smiled Stepney. We'll get there, and be early, too.
With that, the 2 set off with their train. Although I don't know how all those coaches were parked in that little shed. It looks awfully small unless it extends like a mile back. D261 I'm sure wasn't pleased to see his day ruined after all the things he said about how much better he was before. Either way though, Stepney and Duck were happy with the progress they were making.
And next they charged at Gordon's Hill beyond. They felt the drag of the heavy coaches here. It was hard work.
And as they said, they arrived earlier than expected. Gordon was very pleased, mostly because it would later show Top Hat and the diesel that Steamies can be just as good, and especially for Stepney since it was his last day on the main line to boot. And although Top Hat seems like he's trying to be open-minded about diesels in general, I'm sure he still favors his steam engines more at this time.
Come back and see us soon, whistled the engines.
And you are always welcome on my Bluebell Railway, too,
replied Stepney. Then he puffed away. What about Diesel? He'd slipped out while no one was looking. But he left 2 things behind. A rather nasty smell and a battered bowler hat.
That's one way to finish things. This episode was a little bit better than the last, but I still feel like it's not doing much with Stepney. It's Stepney's last day, so let's insert another random character into the mix and just include Stepney in the situation at hand. I don't know, it's just not that interesting to me when it comes to Stepney's development. All I can tell you from this point is he works well with trucks, has his own famous branch line, and enjoys long train runs. The third fact is more or less what's done here. After D261 flops in his performance, Duck and Stepney take over. Nothing wrong with that, but it didn't put the character up against any kind of challenge. It just so happened D261 fell flat because of his own Gordonism. As for D261, he's a quirky character. Not dastardly, nor thoughtful. He's just unapologetic in his words. It would be interesting to see him return, but I think we have enough banana boat diesels hanging around on Sodor, aka Daisy and Boko. Daisy easily could have been D261 in this scenario, or something. It's not a bad story, but not good either. Stepney's an underrated character and should be used better than this. Music was good, but didn't have much variety either. The two big themes to be utilized were very much at the end. The first was the chase theme as Stepney and Duck take out their train, while the other is Stepney's as he leaves. There was also a mini-cue for D261, but just like Boko, there really hasn't been an official theme for them. The rest was all incidental music. However, set design was far better. The entry starts off with numerous angles at Tidmouth Sheds, and the narrow gauge engine sheds at the end. For stations, Duck and Stepney pass through Wellsworth and Crovan's Gate. And lastly, they also go over Gordon's Hill, which in all honesty has been absent for quite some time. It's great to see it again though. Next episode is Henry and the Elephant. Thanks for watching.